Hello and welcome to Post Games, a podcast about why and how we love video games. I am your host, Chris Plant, and I am so happy to have you here. It is spooky season, so that might be why I have been thinking a lot about a short horror story from 120 years ago. In the fall of 1902, the magazine Harper's Monthly published The Monkey's Paw by English author W.W. Jacobs. Now, you might not have read the original work, but you have undoubtedly seen the countless parodies and ripoffs, whether it's from The Simpsons, or Alfred Hitchcock Presents, or this year's ultra-gory horror film, The Monkey. Every Monkey's Paw story shares a basic structure. There's a powerful, cursed object that will grant wishes, but, importantly, each wish will come at a terrible and often ironic cost. In the original story, an older man named Mr. White acquires the monkey's paw and, being warned of its curse, chooses not to make a wish. You see, Mr. White realizes he actually has a pretty nice life living with his wife and his older son. Does he really need much more? And yet, one thing begins to gnaw at him: his mortgage. See, for £200, he would be able to pay that mortgage off, and he wouldn't have to be worrying about debt anymore. And so, against the proper warning, he makes a wish for £200, no more, no less. The monkey's paw curls, slithering in his hand, he drops to the floor, and nothing happens at all. That night, nothing happens. They go to bed, they wake up, nothing happens. Pretty typical day. His son Herbert, he goes to work, they live their life, and then knock knock at the end of the day. Well, it's not Herbert, it's Herbert's employer. You see, there was an accident at work, one that horribly maimed and killed their child, Herbert. Their son's employer have visited for two reasons. One, to deliver this news, and two, to deliver a bereavement payment of £200. The Monkey's Paw began its life warning readers about the dangers that come with wanting more than you need. But like all art, its message and its function have evolved through many years. And now this humble story that was more or less unceremoniously published in a magazine, of which few original copies remain, gets at the true cost of modern comfort. Yes, that is my claim. The Monkey's Paw is the story of what it is to be alive in 2025. Want a piece of glass that fits in your pocket and contains all of the world's information, past and present? Want to find the love of your life by swiping left and right with your thumb? Want to never be bored again? Well, we have it all, and yet all of it feels, well, a little cursed. Or maybe a lot of cursed. Post Games, of course, is a show about why and how we love video games, so this particular look at the Monkey's Paw will be about that. Each week, for the past 20 or so episodes, I have felt the conversation circling the hobby's wishes as if they were made on a monkey's paw. I want more games to play than I could ever have time for. I want them to be so cheap or even free. And I want to be able to play them wherever and whenever I want. And if you're making games, well, you want that to be easy too. In fact, it shouldn't cost anything, and you should be able to sell games wherever you want. These are all amazing wishes. And yet they have led us to a very strange outcome. Over the next 2 episodes, we will learn why we are suddenly drowning in video games, and what both players and creators have already begun to do to adapt. This week on Post Games, the too many games problem. Bloomberg reporter and Triple Click host Jason Schreier joins me to explain how the video game business is battling its own abundance. Act 1, Heaven for Gamers. Act 2, Hell for Game Makers. A special Patreon bonus, Jason Schreier is one of the few reporters at a mainstream publication. So, we have a chat about mainstream video coverage. If you've ever wondered, hey, why don't I see a lot of this stuff in the New York Times? They cover movies and TV, or in your favorite magazine, or in pretty much anything. Well, Jason has some answers. And, of course, Act 3, the news of the week. Before we go any further, this is just a quick reminder to you that if you like the show, please leave a review on Apple or Spotify. Please just recommend it to a friend. All of those things go so far in keeping this show healthy and alive. I super appreciate it. But I won't hold you any longer. We have roughly 5 million video games to get to, and we'll do it right after this break. Acts 1 and 2. Heaven for gamers, hell for game makers. By day, my guest, Jason Schreier, is a reporter at Bloomberg, where he routinely breaks news about the biggest studios in video games. By night, he co-hosts the video game conversation podcast, Triple Click. Somewhere in between all of that, he manages to also write books like Blood, Sweat, and Pixels and Press Reset. His latest book, Play Nice, which tells the history of the iconic mega developer Blizzard, is now available on paperback, and you should check it out. Now, Jason recently published the story, "The Video Game Industry Has a Problem. There Are Too Many Games," in which he writes, in 2024, a staggering 18,626 games were released on Steam, according to SteamDB, a website that tracks data on popular PC platforms. That's an increase of around 93% from 2020, when 9,656 games were released. This glut of new releases stems from a number of factors, including widening interest in games, the rise of cheaper and easier development tools, and lower barriers to entry. There was once a time when it was impossible to create a video game and get it into people's hands unless you had a publisher that could get you prime shelf position at GameStop and, of course, Walmart. But over the past decade, as customers pivoted en masse from physical to digital games, the playing field has been leveled. In our conversation, Jason explains why this has been great for gamers, but why we are beginning to see the ramifications for the artists who make games that now compete against thousands of new releases and an even greater existential threat. So, let's get to the conversation. To start, I wanted to quote a line from this piece that you wrote about the problem of too many games. You write, "Over the past few years, the video game industry has faced a difficult contraction period during which companies have laid off thousands of employees due to flattened growth. There have been many reasons for this shift, such as huge COVID-era investments that didn't pan out. But one problem stands above the rest. There are too many video games." So when I read that, there are a lot of ails in the video game industry. To hear that this is the biggest one, it kind of knocked me over. And I'm curious, what's your case for that? Why is this such a big problem for video games?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's the biggest ail in the video game industry.
Sure.
Let's make that clear. I think there are a couple others that are kind of the woes that the video game industry is facing. But when it comes to getting attention, the oversaturation of the video game market is certainly a big problem. Nowadays, when you launch a new game, you're competing against so many other new releases. And then also, perhaps even more alarmingly, you're competing against the games that people are already sucked into and spending all their time on, like the Minecraft and GTA Online and so on and so forth. Yeah, I mean, it is a problem. We still certainly see some indie breakout hits, and I don't know, Peak just came out and became a breakout hit, just kind of out of nowhere. And we certainly are seeing games do well when they have a lot of hype behind them, like Silksong. But now more than ever, it's harder to get attention. And we've seen a whole bunch of games, both in the AAA and in the indie space and in the AA space, fail to get traction because it's so hard to break amongst the noise. Like, there's just so much noise around so many releases every day that it's just so hard to get attention for a lot of these games. I don't know, maybe a good example is just like a couple weeks ago, there was this game called Hell Is Us that came out. It got decent reviews, and I would have been curious to check it out if not for a dozen other games that came out like around the same time that I was hoping to, or that I planned on playing as well. That game seems to have not quite met expectations based on what the director has been alluding to in interviews and whatnot. I think partially because it came out on the same day as Silksong, but also because a game like that might have had more of a chance to stand out or at least get attention for what it was doing that was unique if there weren't so many other games coming out.
We're going to dig into the many problems here. But before we do that, I want to talk about the positives, because I think that there is a certain type of person who reads your article and their reaction is, what the fuck are you talking about? You sound like Scrooge McDuck saying, I have too many gold coins in my swimming pool. Why would I want fewer games? So are there positives to all of this for the consumer, for anybody?
Yeah, it's funny. I think a lot of times people read a headline of an article and they don't read the article and they just react to the headline. But even in this case, the headline spelled out what I was saying, because this headline says the video game industry, keyword industry, has a problem. Not video game players have a problem. Not video game critics have a problem. The video game industry has a problem. There are too many games. But somehow a large portion of Blue Sky, which has gotten just as bad as Twitter used to be, not as bad as current Twitter, but as bad as Twitter pre-Elon Musk used to be. A large portion of Blue Sky reacted to that as if I had said this was a problem for gamers, which of course it is not. It is a wonderful thing for gamers to have this incredible bounty of choices that people have these days. It is a big problem if you are a video game company trying to stay afloat. And I think that it feels like we're getting more and more to the same spot that some other industries are in, the book industry, the music industry, where there's going to be much less of an expectation when you release something to actually be able to make a living off of it. It's going to be much harder to actually get the attention and get the sales numbers that you need to turn a profit on some of these creations. But yeah, I mean, from a customer perspective, and then both the headline and the body of the article point this out. From a customer perspective, this is great news. It's great to have this just wealth of choices in the games that we get to play, both in terms of genre, in terms of variety, in terms of quality. From an industry perspective, not so much.
Yeah, I mean, the point about it being saying games industry in the headline is interesting, and maybe we're taking too much of a tangent here, but I do feel there is an issue with a certain subset of video gamer that hears video game industry and it's all one thing.
Or they think of themselves. They're like, that includes me, the person who spends $1,000 on video games every year.
Yeah, I mean, for when we're recording this, the film One Battle After Another came out this weekend. And so much discourse already of, did it make enough money? And that matters to a very small group of people. But you would feel that it matters to everybody. And now you can twist it and contort it and say, well, if it succeeds and I get more movies that I like, you're so extrapolating out far from your actual role in this entire machine. So I see why people felt that when they read it, but I think your point obviously stands.
Yeah, I mean, I also think that gamers tend to just they've been coddled so much by the video game industry that they just believe that everything is all about them. But yes, this is a tangent. Really, what the story is saying, and what I believe to be true, is that the gaming industry has a very big discoverability problem and attention problem. And I think that a lot of the new games that are coming out that might have seen growth from players who are just kind of moving from one game to another are now not seeing that growth because a lot of those players are just sticking with old favorites, or they're just not even noticing the new games.
We'll get to the new games and the old favorites in just a second. One last of the, I guess, positive framing, if we're trying to look at this through the most rose-colored glasses, is all of these video game developers chose to make these games, right? There are more and more people every year who are choosing to make video games. They feel incentivized. They feel like there's opportunity for it. What is going on in the video game industry, in the community, that is inspiring people to pick up and make all of this stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, two thoughts come to mind. One is that more people are playing games than ever before, despite the fact that maybe the video game customer market hasn't increased. The number of people who are interested in games as an art form certainly has. And a lot of people just kind of are interested in creating art, especially during a time that is really difficult for a lot of people. People tend to find solace in creating things. But the other thing, and this I think is much more of an answer to your question, is that video games game development tools have really been democratized. It's easier than ever to create a game by downloading Unity or Game Maker or even Unreal, if you're really hardcore, or going into Roblox and making something. It's easier than ever to make a game. There have been some stories in recent years about solo developers, people who really just were able to create things by themselves. And sometimes they're even actually solo developers and not solo developers with 1,000 of their friends. But now that it's easier than ever to make games, and then it's also easier than ever to release them. When you and I were coming up in this industry, Steam was a lot more gatekeepy than it is today. Steam did not allow people to just publish things. First, it was very limited. Then they opened this process called Greenlight, Steam Greenlight, for a little while. Nowadays, it's very easy to get a game on Steam. You don't really have to do much of anything other than go through Valve's process. So it is easier than ever to make a game, and it is easier than ever to release a game and get it potentially in front of people. Although I think those two things are kind of inverse in that the easier it is to release a game and put it up on a platform, the harder it is to get it in front of people. But yes, this is all a great thing. The democratization of gaming tools, the fact that anyone who has the wherewithal could potentially go out and make a game by themselves, that is an amazing thing. And I think that is certainly qualifies for your list of positives.
And to be fair, people start making games years in advance, right? We were not at the exact same problem that we're at right now. So let's dig into the problem we're at right now. You mentioned the audience, that everybody plays games. In theory, supply and demand, if there's massive growing supply, that's not a huge issue if there's also massive growing demand. But is that what we're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, the issue is that a lot of those people, especially younger people, are not going on Steam and playing the new releases. They're not going to the PlayStation Store and buying Ghosts of Yotei or whatever. They are going on Roblox and playing Roblox. And that is what they see as games, like is whatever they get on Roblox, whatever their friends are playing on Roblox. And you could look at the numbers. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with Grow a Garden, but that was a game that was released on Roblox earlier this year and broke the concurrent record for all-time number of people who were playing a game at once. They had roughly 30 million people playing that game at once, which is an astronomical number. I mean, for perspective, that's very close to the number of total concurrent Steam users, like record number of Steam users that have ever been playing on all of Steam at the same time. So what you have is, again, especially younger demographics, you have a lot of people who are really into games, but their definition of a game is much different than you or I's. Like, we think of games as things we're playing on the PC, things we're playing on the consoles, things that are coming out all the time. They think of games as whatever's on Roblox, or just playing GTA Online with their buddies, playing Minecraft with their buddies. So that audience is growing and growing immensely. It's just that it's their playing habits and spending habits are not exactly what the big gaming companies would like them to be. And once again, I feel like I have to add this caveat all the time. I am talking about this and looking at this from a video game industry perspective, from the perspective of the people who are running these big companies or even smaller companies and trying to get attention, not from a player perspective. From a player perspective is a totally different conversation.
Yeah. So let's dig into it from those perspectives of the big company, of the indie studio. This fall, Electronic Arts plans to release Battlefield 6. There was this report from Ars Technica that suggested that EA has an internal goal of 100 million players for Battlefield 6. How does a company like EA plan to reach that audience when they're competing against countless other games, new and old and user-generated?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a little bit of misreporting around that. I don't remember the exact specifics, but when something like that is talking about 100 million players, presumably it is talking about the free-to-play component of Battlefield 6, their Battle Royale mode. And I think 100 million would be comparable to their biggest competitor, which is Call of Duty Warzone, which I believe hit 100 million players at some point or another. Certainly in the tens of millions of people. And free-to-play, which is a whole other part of this conversation, the player numbers are totally different than sales numbers. So the number of copies they sell of Battlefield 6 will not be anywhere close to 100 million. I think they'll be thrilled if they hit hit 15, 20 million copies of Battlefield 6. And that's how you get to those people. I mean, you have your game on phones, you try to reach that same audience that has gotten into Call of Duty Warzone. Maybe you peel off some Fortnite players, some PUBG players, PlayerUnknown Battleground players, and you tap into that audience, which is significant. And a lot of those people are single game players. A lot of those people are just playing what their friends play. They're playing it every night. They're playing it on their phone, on their way to school, on the subway, on the train, wherever. I've seen several times while traveling for work, I've seen people playing Fortnite on their phones at the airport. And my most recent trip to LA for Summer Games Fest a couple of months ago, a large group of people next to me was all just crowding around a phone playing Grove Garden. So there you go. And so that audience definitely exists, and it's definitely possible for a free-to-play game to reach them. It's just you have to be able to market on the scale that EA can with a Battlefield game. Their marketing budget for that game is likely well into the nine figures. So you can reach those people, you can hit those numbers, but you pretty much have to be one of a few games that can afford to do it.
Let's take a quick break, and we will come back in just a moment. These games that are smaller scale, that are not Silksong, but are competing in that territory. How do you see these smaller studios, I guess, kind of reacting to this problem over the next few years? Because right now, you know, we see people just moving out of the way of a Silksong. That's a strategy. But I imagine there's a lot of shifts that need to happen for an indie publisher or indie studio over between now and, 2029.
Yeah, I don't know if Silksong was really the issue. I've seen some persuasive arguments that it didn't really matter, that Silksong was released on the same day as X game, or that games didn't necessarily need to move out of the way of Silksong. A lot of times when you're a smaller game, you are relying heavily on a couple of metrics. Steam wishlists are a big one because that helps your game bubble up thanks to Steam's algorithm. It helps you get placement on the store and whatnot. Also, new releases is a big one. A lot of people, at least traditionally, when releasing new Steam games, have been relying on getting on that list of new releases because streamers will sometimes go through that list and pick games from there that they think look interesting and play them, and that can help just build this kind of snowball of word of mouth. If one streamer plays it and then maybe they rate another streamer and another streamer thinks it looks cool, that can really start just by them all seeing your game on new releases. The problem these days is that new releases, you're barely on there for like a few hours before you get knocked off because so many games are getting released on Steam every single day. So that's one avenue of potential visibility that has really dried up for a lot of these smaller companies that maybe don't have the potential of huge marketing budgets.
Yeah, I want to dig into that one just a little bit further, which I think there's a certain type of skeptic to everything that we're talking about who would say that, hey, a good game will rise to the top thanks to the democratization of game releases. We live in a meritocracy. I assume you don't believe that, but how do you respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any real way to know that. If we're talking about numbers here and metrics that are measurable, let's talk about Metacritic. As much as I've always loathed Metacritic for various reasons, the aggregated scores on Metacritic can be a helpful measure for like how people are feeling about a game. Nowadays, I don't have the article in front of me, but a significant number of games that are reviewed and included on Metacritic are above an 80. 80 is generally considered good, right? Like we all consider, 80, that's a good game. Nowadays, you cannot stand out if you're above an 80. If you're above a 90, that's another case. And that is kind of the upper echelon of games that are released. I believe there's only less than a dozen games that are 90 plus on Metacritic, not counting all the remasters and shit.
Right. And that assumes you get reviewed.
That's I'm talking about the games that do get reviewed, right? Yeah. That's one kind of category of titles. The ones that are above a 90, those have all gotten significant amount of attention. I believe they've all done at least fairly well. Games that don't get reviewed, I mean, that's a whole nother story. Or games that maybe get reviewed but don't get that kind of attention. Maybe there are 88s that are niche for whatever reason. There could be a few reasons for that. One is that they're a game that just isn't something that will ever really have mass market appeal. There's a game called, Despelote? Is that how you pronounce it? That was very well reviewed, but is never going to be a smash hit because it's kind of this narrative autobiographical game about playing soccer as a kid, and it's not something that is ever going to sell 1 million copies. So that's another bucket. And then, there's another bucket of games that could be amazing, but no one ever finds them because they're just released on Steam and sent out to die and buried among all the other new releases that are released every year. I think for those, it's probably even harder to potentially get discovered than it ever was before. And they need some sort of strategy for getting noticed before they even send them out into the void. I think some people who ascribe to the belief that a good game will be discovered no matter what should try to release a game on Steam without any marketing and see how that goes.
A publisher would love to save money on marketing if they truly believed that they even had a glimpse of a hope without having to, set the weight in their favor. We would see it.
Yeah, and then I want to bring up another example because this to me speaks to a lot of the problems with oversaturation. I think single player games, it is easier to have a hit these days than multiplayer games. And that is a problem for a lot of the games that were funded by VC money about 4 or 5 years ago during the COVID boom and when venture capital was just throwing around $50 million checks to anyone who had ever worked at Blizzard. And this to me feels like a very good tangible example because a company called Dreamhaven that was founded by Mike Morhaime, the founder of Blizzard, released 2 games this year, Thunderfolk and Wildgate. And as my colleague Cecilia at Bloomberg reported, both of those games did not live up to their sales expectations, despite both of them being pretty solid games. I believe they're both 80, 85, something like that on Metacritic. They've both been received well by players. I played both of them. They're both very polished and very solid games.
And that's where the marketing matters because I guarantee there is a large contingency of people listening to this episode right now who have not only didn't play those games, but have never heard of them.
Yes, and they were marketed. I mean, they got advertisements. Thunderfolk, I believe, had a whole big promotion with Critical Role. Wildgate, I saw various ads and promotions on different areas. It's just that releasing a new multiplayer game in 2025 is just impossible because you're competing against all these other multiplayer games, including the ones that already exist. And I think that the main reason that those games just didn't get any traction is because it's so hard to peel people away from the shooters or the multiplayer games that they're already playing unless they know that something is going to be a guaranteed hit or unless something has gone viral because it's hilarious and memeable or whatever. Nowadays, releasing a very polished multiplayer game is just not enough. Sure, you could argue that maybe they should have had bigger marketing budgets. I don't know. I mean, when it comes to marketing, it's very difficult to reach people, and there's a million avenues and a million ways to potentially reach people, and nobody really knows the right way to do that. But in the case of those 2 games, I think that the thing that really doomed them was releasing into an oversaturated marketplace.
I want to talk a little bit more about user-generated content because it is the thing that puts my stomach into the tightest knot. And that's even when you consider other stats that you can hear, which is if you're just talking about new games, 8% of player times went into games released in the last 2 years. That's a stat from Newzoo, which went around earlier this year. But even putting all that aside, and we just talk about user-generated content, how do people compete against it? And I'll pull back just very briefly to something that I think is very personal to us, which is you see all these critic jobs getting removed, not just game critics, but film, theater, whatever critic jobs getting removed across the media. And people say, oh, there's no more criticism anymore. To which I would say, have you been on Letterboxd? There's more criticism than ever before. You can find more writers. You can find people getting paid with Patreons. You can find podcasts. It is happening, but it's happening on, at first, a user-generated level. And now I look at Roblox and I see some version of that. Is that an existential threat? How big is the threat of these platforms to video games 10 years from now when the player base is just accustomed to playing this sort of stuff?
It's hard to say. I don't really know what it's going to be like when the demographic that is currently playing Roblox kind of ages out of it. Will they age out of it? Will they keep playing Roblox forever, or will they move to other types of games? It's really hard to know because I think people who are in their 30s or 40s or even 20s now mostly grew up playing more kind of one-time games or product games as opposed to service games you buy and you play and maybe you play it for a while with your friends and then you move on to the next thing. It will be interesting to see what those habits look like. That said, I mean, this idea of user-generated content just kind of replacing or making professional content go the way of the dodo, I don't really see that happening in the same way that like self-published books on Amazon have not killed the book publishing industry. I think that there are a few things. First of all, I think when you buy a game and it's made by professionals, there's a certain bar of quality and polish that you can expect. And if that's not hit, people will let you know about it. You will learn about it. And that company will probably have some struggles these days, now more important than ever. You're also looking for something that you can't get anywhere else. And I think that is really the way to success in making games and making books and making music and doing criticism or journalism or whatever. It's you really have to create a product for someone that gives them value, that makes them feel like, oh, okay, I'm not going to be able to get this on Letterboxd. I'm not going to be able to get this on Roblox. I'm not going to be able to get this on my forums where I'm reading gaming news. And that is really the only way that people can stand out. And that's, of course, much easier said than done. Like, I don't know. I mean, Silksong just came out. That game, I felt like, was a masterpiece. That is not something that could just be created in Roblox. Or if it is, I haven't seen it. And so I think that what we're going to see is maybe it's going to be tougher and tougher to have a job in the video game industry. Maybe it's going to be tougher to make something that stands out and sells as many copies as Silksong has, reaches as many people as Silksong has, because there's so much more competition. But I think it's still going to be doable. It's just going to move into kind of a different sort of world. And we're already seeing this. I mean, as we're recording this, it was just announced this morning that EA is getting bought by this consortium of private investors. It's going to be taken private. The future of EA is going to look very different than the present does. I think we're going to start seeing a very different video game industry in the next few years.
Yeah. To put a bow on this section, historically, we look back, we say we have too many games, and we think of the video game crash of the early 1980s, right? What is different about this go-around of too many video games from that?
Yeah, I mean, my understanding is that in 1983, when the video game industry crashed, a large reason for that was because the market was just getting flooded with cheaply made, kind of low quality games. There are a lot of stories about E.T., most infamously for the Atari. And it was really, after that happened, and Nintendo helped revive the living room console market, at least here in the US. I'm talking about the US only here. It was really, there was the whole Nintendo gold seal of quality, right? Like you got a Nintendo game and you could feel like, oh, okay, this is a professional level game. This is like at least quality bar that I can expect most of the time, at least. I mean, there were some clunkers on the Nintendo too. But nowadays it's very different. Nowadays there's like a glut of games and a lot of them are pretty good. I think nobody has any shortage of good games to play. There is not an issue of, oh my God, every game I'm playing on Steam these days is shitty. I think that along with the democratization of video game tools has come a lot more understanding of how to make games and make them in really interesting and creative and polished ways.
What I'm hearing here is when I go on Blue Sky and I hear that video games are dead, it might be a little overstated.
I think the video game industry as we know it today might not be around for much longer. It might have a very different look in a few years. But I think video games as an art form and as a product are stronger than they've ever been and will only continue to be. I mean, a good example of that is like the Game of the Year nominations haven't come out for this year. But if you look at Metacritic right now, the top 6, if we were to pick our Game of the Year nominations, what we thought would be nominated as the 6 best games of the year at the Game Awards in December. And if we picked the 6 highest rated games on Metacritic right now, 5 of the 6 are independently developed. Hades 2, Clair Obscur, Blueprints, Hollow Knight Silksong, and Split Fiction, which is published by EA but made by an independent studio, which I think speaks to the position that the video game industry is in right now, where a lot of the creativity and innovation and quality is not coming from the big companies in a way that it used to be. It used to be that pretty much every highest rated game of the year was made from an EA or Ubisoft or an Activision or Square Enix or another big AAA publicly traded mega budget company. That has changed. And I think that is the sea change we're going to see moving forward as these big companies contract and consolidate and find ways to navigate this increasingly untenable industry. One main reason for that is the oversaturation of the marketplace. I think that we'll see a lot more independently made Game of the Year contenders and top-rated games going forward. And that's a really good thing if you're a player. I could realistically say with no hyperbole that of those games I just mentioned, 2 of them have become some of my favorite games of all time, Blueprints and Silksong. Like, that's crazy to me. 2 of my favorite games of all time just came out this year. Like, that's wild.
Well, thank you so much for doing the show today. I super appreciate it. Can you plug all of the amazing stuff that you have out in the world?
Yeah, well, my newish book, Play Nice, The Rise, Fall, and Future of Blizzard Entertainment, the paperback edition, I believe will have just come out by the time this airs. October 7th, it is out. So that's pretty cool. If you want to, if you've been holding out because you're like, man, this fancy hardcover is not for me, check out the paperback version of Play Nice. And of course, you can find me on TripleClick, where I promise I'm not this negative always. You want some positivity, get me talking about Blueprints, man.
I love it. Thank you so much. I will see you in the real world in a few days.
Yeah. Oh, I'm excited.
Hey, it's the part of the show where we split up. Patreon subscribers, I have an extra long conversation with today's guest, Jason Schreier, about why mainstream newspapers, magazines, and media brands are so reluctant to cover video games. And also what it is like for him to write for a mainstream publication like Bloomberg. If you're not a subscriber, no worries at all. We will go straight to the news of the week, which includes a Mario spin-off game that for over 30 years has been unavailable in the United States. You're gonna want to hear about it. So, let's do it. Act 3, the news of the week. Nintendo released its own version of an animated Pixar short, and it didn't explain why, at least at first. The short appeared on Tuesday across Nintendo's video platforms. In the short, which is totally wordless, a baby is entranced by a magical pacifier that floats across its room. The adorable little booger crawls in pursuit of the pink plastic bauble as it zips around the furniture and into the air. And then, just as the toddler takes their very first confident steps to catch their plastic prey, their mom opens the nursery door, catching not the magic of a floating pacifier, but that of her own child. It's very sweet. Fans speculated for about 24 hours that the short could be a teaser for next year's Super Mario Galaxy movie. The kid's blonde hair and the ocean fuzz blue onesie resembled maybe a little Rosalina. Others wondered if the teaser was, perhaps, a hint of a new Pikmin game. Maybe this invisible little Binky was being carried around by those critters and we just couldn't see them. I, personally, and assuredly wrongly, hoped it would be kind of like a continuation of Nintendogs. Not about dogs or cats, but Nintendo babies. And maybe we would just move a little floating Binky around. Perhaps we are the invisible creature all along. Well, as usual, the simplest answer is often the right one. A day later, Nintendo released the exact same animated short, but this time, little Pikmin, red, blue, green, yellow, were carrying the Binky across the room. It became even more adorably slapstick than before. So what is this? Is it an ad for Pikmin? Is it just a way of letting people know that there are parental controls on the Nintendo Switch too, which was linked on the YouTube video? Is it a clue of something else? I don't know. I mean, a game makes the most sense, right? Next year is Pikmin's 25th anniversary. But it could be a movie or a TV show, or it could just be a one-off web short. Nintendo has made a variety of Pikmin shorts over the years. Despite the game's relatively modest popularity compared to, Mario and Zelda, Pikmin is a personal favorite of the legendary designer Shigeru Miyamoto. In an interview as recent as May with IGN, Miyamoto said of the series, "Going back to Pikmin, I really appreciate you bringing it up. I spent a lot of time the past 5-6 years really wanting to grow Pikmin. I wanted to see if there's other ways that we can have people engage and get to know Pikmin that's outside of the population that plays video games." He continues, "And it really stems back to 20 years ago when we did a presentation where it starts off and there's a Pikmin next to you. And so in Nintendo, there's sort of like an unwritten rule. Mario needs to stay in the Mario universe, or Splatoon needs to stay in Splatoon, and we don't use different characters in the same place. But Pikmin has this kind of unwritten rule where they're okay to appear with other characters. I think Pikmin has a lot of potential to be used in many different occasions. When you're looking at small kids, they have a certain appeal for things that are cute, and when they grow older, maybe in their 20s, they start to lose appeal for that. But I think Pikmin has this unique ability to have appeal across a broad range." So maybe all of the above. You know, maybe it's a movie, TV show. Maybe there's Pikmin in Super Mario Galaxy, the movie. It can be anything and everything. It just seems like Miyamoto wants to make sure Pikmin's somewhere. What else happened this week? Electronic Arts released Battlefield 6. Now, throughout the year, EA's future seemed to hinge in part on the success of their latest big bet, a game that they hope won't just revive the Battlefield franchise, but seriously compete with ongoing games like Call of Duty Warzone and Fortnite. How much their future hinges on the success of this game now is less clear, considering it is now under active acquisition by private equity and the Saudi Arabia Investment Fund, as we talked about last week. Now, the game itself, initial reactions, they're positive. The title has an 84 on Metacritic. That is the highest score in the series since 2016's Battlefield 1, which is not to be confused with the first Battlefield game, Battlefield 1942, released in 2002. Video games. Speaking of big bets from big publishers, friend of the show Stephen Totilo broke news in the newsletter GameFile that last year, Ubisoft canceled an Assassin's Creed game set in the Reconstruction period following the American Civil War. Totilo writes, "In this Reconstruction-era Assassin's Creed, gamers would play as a black man who had been formerly enslaved in the South and moved west to start a new life. Recruited by the series' assassins, he would return to the South to fight for justice in a conflict that would, among other things, see him confront the emergence of the Ku Klux Klan." Totilo continues, 3 sources told GameFile that word filtered through the company last July that management in Paris had stopped development of the game for 2 reasons. 1, online backlash that spring to the reveal of Yasuke, a historically inspired black samurai, as a protagonist in the company's then upcoming Assassin's Creed Shadows, and 2, concern that the political climate in the United States was becoming increasingly tense. You can find a link to the full story in the show notes, and you should give it a read. And lastly, because I always end on some good news just for you, American gamers can now play a Mario spin-off, long limited to Japan. Originally released in 1993, the puzzle platformer Mario and Wario is now available on Nintendo Online. The game actually required the SNES mouse, so Switch 2 owners will finally have a reason to use the new hardware's most perky feature. It also sounds like you can plug a USB mouse into the Nintendo Switch 1 to make that work. I don't know about that. But anyway, that is the news of the week. Okay, so now we have our arms around the biggest problem in video games, quite literally. There are too many games. Next week, we will learn how gamers and game makers have already begun to adapt to this new world. My guest will be Simon Carless, the founder of Game Discover Co., a company that has created special tools to help studios create and release games in ways that get them in front of their intended audience. He is an expert in the increasingly important craft of game discovery, which sounds a little silly because you turn on Steam and you've discovered quite a bit. But have you discovered what's right for you? If you've ever wondered why certain trends take over video games, why game makers pick peculiar release dates, or how masterpieces can get high Metacritic scores and still fail to break out, well, you'll get some answers. But for now, I begin my farewell. A reminder, post-game supporters get the show and the newsletter early on Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern, and usually a little earlier than that. They get extra acts and bonus materials. This week, Patreon listeners got a tour behind the scenes of mainstream video game coverage and learned why so little of it exists. Plus, each month, subscribers get a new entry in my ongoing video series, Video Game Journalism 101, which I adapted from a college-level course on the history of games, journalism, and the media. The latest episode, which just went live, is about reviews and criticism, and honestly, I think it's great even if you don't care about journalism at all. We now live in a world where criticism and reviews are inescapable, and I explain that in much greater detail in the video. I think you should check it out. Plus, for Patreon subscribers, no ads on anything. You can subscribe at patreon.com/postgames. You can get the newsletter for free at post.games. Postgames logo by James Barham, theme by the wonderful Mark Sparling, and some news. I am now doing speaking engagements. So if your company or university wants to learn how video games are becoming the dominant form of popular culture, shoot me a note at chris@post.games, and I will put you in touch with my booking agency. And lastly, a special thank you to this week's guest, Jason Schreier. Again, you should check out his new book, Play Nice. It is available now in paperback, so cheaper than ever. Like the show, leave a review on Apple or Spotify, or share it with a friend. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next week.